Call this meeting to order. This is the Flood Control District meeting. It's Tuesday, October the 25th, 2022. It's 10 o'clock a.m. and that's the time that was noticed and posted for this meeting. We're in Building G on Bisbee and Melody Lane. Any item on this agenda is open for discussion and possible action. And I'll begin with the roll call. District 1.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Crosby is here.
District 2, Supervisor English is present. District 3.
Supervisor Judd is here.
We have a complete board. Members of the public may also attend this meeting by Microsoft Teams computer or mobile app or by phone by calling 602-609-7513 or 888-680-6714, conference ID 286-852-584#. If you have trouble accessing this meeting remotely, call 520-432-9200 for direction. The board may permit public comment during the discussion of any item on this agenda. To speak to an agenda item, complete and return the speaker request form to the clerk of the board prior to the meeting. First is the call to the public, and I have received no speaker request forms for the call to the public, so I'll close the call to the public and go on to the consent agenda, which is item number 1, and it's the minutes. Do I have a motion?
Madam Chair, I move that we approve consent agenda item number 1.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Chair votes aye, and it's unanimous and so ordered. We begin with the action items. Number 2 is to approve a scope of work. Do I have a motion?
Madam, I move we approve the scope of work with J.E. Fuller Hydrology and Geomorphology for the implementation of the alert flood warning system in the not to exceed amount of $83,871.
I'll second it.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. So, Mr. Appel, would you explain to us what you're asking us to do?
You bet. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. This is a request to extend a scope of work for our contractor, J.E. Fuller, to do the maintenance on a system that's been initiated since 2012. We're in our 10th year. Back in 2012, there was a 5-year plan developed to build out our alert system. An alert stands for Automated Local Evaluation in Real Time. And these are essentially very sophisticated precipitation gauges that we have set up around the county that in real time provide precipitation data back to Tucson and the National Weather Service. And so we also have these hooked into our emergency services center so that if a particular amount of rainfall falls, a lot of rainfall falls in 1 hour, citizens around the county in the vicinity of those rain gauges will get an alert from county emergency services, letting them know that there's been a large event, and if flooding is a possibility for them, then to take some precautions. So this is, again, a contract or a statement of work to extend the work of J.E. Fuller for another 2 years to maintain our system.
Any board members have any questions, comments, concerns?
I do. Mr. Appel, if you're listening there, I think I got my microphone on. How big an area in terms of square inches or square feet of horizontal surface does a rain gauge collect from?
Probably about 24 inches.
Okay. And so on the map that's before us, I happen to have the same one projected here. One of those lavender or blue teardrop shapes might be a depiction of maybe a couple square miles, but in fact, they are very small. So do rain gauges prevent flooding?
They can. They certainly can. If we get record or a real-time notification about a large event, which right now the alarms are set at 2 inches in 1 hour, that is enough that we know that kind of runoff could set off some flooding events, and that in turn alerts our emergency services to send out a notice to folks who are signed up in that system.
I see. I don't get the immediate connection to stopping flooding, however.
It won't stop the flooding. It will warn citizens of the county about potential flooding.
Okay. And that is different than actually controlling flooding. And basically, this is my same essential criticism of the recharge strategy, that it covers such a very, very small amount of area that I'm not convinced that this is the best use of money in comparison to, for instance, loading up several containers full of sandbags or something like that for equal money. That concludes my comments. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Do you have any comments, Ms. Judd?
I just had a couple of questions. So does Graham County have something similar? Because a lot of our flooding comes from the Graham, in this community comes from the Graham Mountains. Just wondering if they have something similar.
They do. In fact, this alert network is statewide.
Okay, so every county is just kind of responsible for their own.
Correct.
And then I appreciate like the notice when I get it on my phone that says to don't drive into washes and that kind of stuff. Is that also, since it's statewide, that's a statewide notice that I'm aware of that we get on our phones, but these are what actually tells the state to put that message out for flash flooding?
This data goes to the National Weather Service, so
Okay.
it helps to
That's where that comes
inform
from.
the National Weather Service and their forecasts for flooding in a particular area. So
Okay.
I believe this data does feed into that National Weather Service data, or National Weather Service notifications.
Yeah, I'm not as familiar with the Huachuca Mountains, but I'm seeing a lot of these sites, you know, because where I'm very familiar, the Chiricahuas, Dos Cabezas. As you know, I met you up there one day.
Yeah.
Anyway, and even Dragoon, I kind of see them as covering the essential spots. The flooding in Elfrida, I don't see where that could have been notified well. Was actually the Rucker Canyon the one that notified of that extra flow coming into Elfrida? And these are just questions. They're not, I'm just curious. So
I don't know whether or not the flooding that originated in Rucker Canyon was forewarned or, given notice to the emergency services about that one.
right.
I'd have to ask emergency services that question.
Because I can't really see how the Rucker Canyon one could have noted what was happening in Elfrida yet. Even without that, Jackie was aware of it and giving information to the community, which I thought was really neat. I mean, I'm glad that we pay attention to it. But since this is part of a bigger system, like we're all obligated to kind of do our part in this, right? It was set up by the legislature or something at one point. So it's almost like we're kind of obligated to do our part. Is that kind of the situation we're in?
Yes, and trying to provide as much warning to the residents of our county about big events.
I see it as public safety in every way, so I think I don't have another question. Thank you.
Okay, I think it's important that we maintain this project that's been going on for years, and I do believe, in answer to your question, Ms. Judd, that I heard the people in flood control say that they were notified about St. David, and it wasn't long after that they were notified about the Rucker. And so obviously, this information feeding in gets to the people that need to know about it, which is flood control and highways. So I think it's important that we maintain it. It seems like a small amount to keep our people thinking that we can help them to avert a disaster. And you look at the amount, and it's certainly less than what was paid for a lot of the damage that was done in Elfrida. So sometimes you have to put dollars in perspective. So I'm in favor of us continuing this. Is there any other discussion before I call for the vote?
I'd just note that the National Weather Service forecasts that Mr. Appel referred to are much different than I believe you said 2 inches per hour of rain that it needs to activate one of these gauges. One's a forecast, one is a result of the actual rain happening.
It's not a certain amount of rain that activates the gauge. it's a certain amount of rain that triggers an alarm. These
Correct.
gauges will gather data on any amount of rain anytime.
Okay,
It's alarm.
that's fine. I appreciate that, Mr. Appel. Nonetheless, radar and satellite provided by the National Weather Service is much different than that in terms of warning and the possibility of seeing what is likely to happen before it happens, which is a forecast, right?
Okay, hearing no other comments, then I will call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. All those opposed?
Nay.
We have one nay, but it's still approved. So it is so ordered. I need to say that the next meeting today is at 10 a.m. in the Board of Supervisors hearing room for a regular board meeting. Flood Control District meeting is adjourned.